In the grand halls of the Galactic Concord, they passed their judgment. Humanity, they declared, was man's staff had resigned from psychological trauma. Fine, Lyra sighed. I will deliver the message personally. 12 hours later, Lyra stood before the United Earth Council in New Geneva. The human representatives stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to outrage to, was that amusement from the North American representative? Let me get this straight, said Representative Amara Okafor of the African Union, leaning forward. Your Galactic Concord is putting us, the entire human race, in timeout. The official term is protective isolation, Lyra replied diplomatically. Call it whatever fancy name you want, sweetie, drawled Representative Marcus Thorne of the North American Coalition. It's still a cosmic restraining order. The barrier will remain in place until humanity demonstrates sufficient maturity, Lyra continued, trying to maintain her composure. Maturity. Representative Lena Jiang of the Asian Confederation stood, her voice sharp as diamond. We have eliminated poverty on our planet, developed clean fusion energy, cured 99% of all known diseases, and established permanent colonies on Mars and Europa. Meanwhile, your precious Concord still cannot agree on standardized docking procedures after 8,000 years. Lyra's skin flushed a deep azure with embarrassment. The human had a point. The docking protocol debate was entering its fourth millennium with no resolution in sight. The decision is final, she said firmly. The barrier goes up tomorrow. It will allow communication but prevent physical passage. In either direction. And if we try to break through, asked a quiet, dangerous voice from the Middle Eastern Alliance representative. The barrier is powered by 13 captured quasars, harnessed through dimensional folding, Lyra stated. It cannot be breached with your current level of technology. The room fell silent. Then, to Lyra's surprise, Representative Thorne started laughing. A deep, hearty, genuine laugh. Oh, honey, he said, wiping a tear from his eye. You really shouldn't have told us that. Excuse me. Nothing says figure out how to break this to a human like telling them it cannot be breached, explained Representative Okafor with a wry smile. You have just issued a direct challenge to an entire planet of people who crossed oceans on wooden rafts because someone said it couldn't be done. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. The Concord's decision stands. You have 24 hours to recall any off-world citizens to your solar system. As she turned to leave, Representative Jiang called after her. Commander, when you see us again, and you will remember this moment. Back on her flagship, Lyra found Lieutenant Xar waiting anxiously. How did they take it, he asked. Exactly as expected, she replied. They are angry, defiant, and... She hesitated. And what, Commander? And I think we might have just made a terrible, terrible mistake. 50 years passed. 50 years of silence from the quarantined solar system. 50 years during which the Galactic Concord congratulated itself on its wise decision and promptly forgot about the troublesome humans. Monitor Kalen of the Soul Containment Zone had the most boring job in the galaxy. Every day, for 20 years, he'd sat in the same chair, staring at the same readings from the boundary barrier. Nothing ever changed. Another thrilling day in paradise, he muttered to his assistant, Tresa, a young Brill with vibrant purple fur who was still enthusiastic about her first deep space assignment. Monitor Kalen, Tresa said, her 6 limbs moving rapidly across different control panels. I have been reviewing the energy signatures from the human system. There's something odd. There's always something odd about them, Kalen replied, not bothering to look up from his game of Zorp, a puzzle that had kept him occupied for the last 5 years. Humans are odd. That's why they're in there, and we are out here. No, I mean really odd, Tracer insisted. The barrier is registering unusual quantum fluctuations at regular, repeating intervals. It's almost like they are testing it, pinging it, learning its resonant frequency. Kalen snorted. They've been testing it for 50 years. The barrier holds. End of story. At that exact moment, an alert chimed. Then another, and another, until the quiet monitoring station was filled with the cacophony of 1,000 screaming warning signals. What in the 7 moons of Kalar? Kalen leapt to his feet, knocking over his precious Zorp game. The main screen showed a catastrophic failure spreading across the boundary barrier. Section by section, the impenetrable wall of energy was collapsing like a string of dying lights. That's impossible, Kalen shouted. The barrier is powered by 13 quasars. Through dimensional folding, yes, Tracer finished for him, her fingers flying across the controls. And somehow, they have created a resonance cascade that's collapsing the entire system. We need to alert the Concorde. We need reinforcements. We need. She never finished the sentence. The entire monitoring station shuddered violently as something massive dropped out of what the humans called hyperspace directly in front of them. It was a ship. At least, Kalen thought it was a ship. It didn't look like any vessel he had ever seen. It was sleek, almost predatory in design, with strange, glowing blue lines pulsing along its black hull. And it was enormous, dwarfing their monitoring station like a kraken next to a minnow. By the eternal stars, whispered Tracer. What is that? The answer came moments later when their communication system activated on its own. A holographic figure appeared in the center of their command deck. A human female, with dark skin and silver hair braided into a complex crown, wearing a crisp, unfamiliar naval uniform. Greetings from the United Earth Alliance, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I am Admiral Eris Thorne of the U.S. Daedalus. It appears your barrier had a slight malfunction. Hope we didn't startle you. Kalen could only gape in shock. Tracer recovered more quickly. How? How did you breach the barrier? She asked, her voice a mix of fear and scientific curiosity. Oh, that old thing. Admiral Thorne waved a dismissive hand. We could have broken through decades ago. The resonance cascade was child's play. We decided to use the time to innovate instead. Thanks for the 50 years of uninterrupted, fully funded research and development. It was very productive. Kalen finally found his voice. This is an outrage. The Concorde will. The Concorde will what? The Admiral interrupted, her smile vanishing. Put us in timeout again. We are not here to start a war, Monitor Kalen. We are here to rejoin galactic society. On our terms. That's not how it works. Kalen sputtered. It is now, replied Admiral Thorne. While you have been containing us, we have been busy. We have colonized every planet and moon in our system. We have developed technologies your Concorde hasn't even begun to imagine. And we have made friends. Friends. Tracer echoed. What friends could you possibly have made from inside the barrier? The Admiral's smile returned. You didn't really think a barrier that allows communication would keep us isolated, did you? The Lyrans have been quite chatty. So have the CRTH, the Mondashans, and about 30 other species who felt the Concorde's decision was short-sighted. Kalen collapsed back into his chair. Treason, he muttered. All of them. Or visionaries, suggested Admiral Thorne. Depends on your perspective. Now, we will be heading to Galactic Central to present our case for readmission. We'd be honored if you'd accompany us. You mean as prisoners, Kalen said bitterly. The Admiral laughed. Passengers, Monitor. We are not barbarians. Though I can't promise the Concorde will be as understanding when they learn you let us escape. That thought had already occurred to Kalen. Failure was not treated kindly. Fine, he said, rising with what dignity he could muster. But I warn you, human, the Concorde will not be pleased. Oh, I'm counting on it, Admiral Thorne replied with a wink. The journey to Galactic Central took a fraction of the time it should have. The U.S. Daedalus moved through space in ways that defied conventional physics, slipping between dimensional layers like a fish through water. On the bridge, Kalen watched in reluctant fascination. The human crew operated with seamless efficiency. Some weren't even fully human anymore, with cybernetic enhancements or subtle genetic modifications. They called themselves the Augmented. Your chief engineer, Kalen said to Admiral Thorne, pointing to a human with glowing circuitry visible beneath his translucent skin. What happened to him? Nothing happened, T. Oh, him, Monitor, the Admiral replied. He chose that path. Neural interfacing allows him to feel the ship's systems as extensions of his own body. He is the ship, and the ship is him. Your species has changed, Kalen observed. We have evolved, she corrected. Not all of us choose augmentation. The choice is individual, as it should be. As they approached Galactic Central, the massive space station that served as the Concorde's headquarters, Kalen expected alarms, defensive maneuvers, weapons fire. Instead, they were greeted by a welcoming committee. What in the void? He whispered as the Daedalus docked alongside ships bearing the markings of the Lyrans, the CRTH, and dozens of other Concorde species. Admiral Thorne smiled that enigmatic smile again. Like I said, We made friends. The galaxy is changing, Monitor Kalen. The question is, will the Concorde change with it, or be left behind? As they disembarked, a familiar figure waited in the docking bay. Commander Lyra, now with streaks of gray in her Vespery fur and the insignia of a Grand Admiral on her uniform. Admiral Thorne, Lyra greeted her warmly. You were only a cadet when we last met. And you were a commander, Lyra, Thorne replied with a nod. I made it a point to remember every human I encountered. I suspected we'd meet again someday. Kalen looked between them in confusion. Grand Admiral, this human has violated the boundary barrier. A barrier that should never have been erected, Lyra said firmly, her gaze fixed on Thorne with something that looked like respect. The Concorde is about to learn that lesson, the hard way. As they walked towards the council chambers, Kalen had the distinct feeling that the galaxy would never be the same again. The Grand Concorde Chamber was a marvel of architecture, a vast dome of transparent alloy revealing the star-studded cosmos. At the center stood the High Council podium, where the 9 most powerful members of galactic society determined the fate of worlds. Today, those 9 faces displayed varying degrees of shock, outrage, and disbelief. Admiral Eris Thorne stood before them, flanked by Grand Admiral Lyra and representatives from 30 other species. This is an abomination. High Arbiter Forlag, now ancient even by his species standards, sputtered with indignation. Humans standing in the Concorde chamber. Guards, arrest these escapees. The elite Concorde guard didn't move. They won't obey that order, Forlag, Lyra said calmly. They answer to me now. Treason, shrieked Forlag. Mutiny. I will have you executed. Oh, do shut up, Forlag. A new melodious voice joined the conversation. You have been threatening to execute everyone who disagrees with you for 3 centuries. It has gotten rather tiresome. All eyes turned to Counselor Drex of the Lyrans, a tall, elegant being with feathers that shimmered with iridescent colors. He seemed completely at ease. You, Forlag pointed an accusing pseudopod. You have been conspiring with them all along. Conspiring implies secrecy, Drex replied with a casual wave of a feathered hand. I have been quite open about my communication with Earth, as have the CRTH, the Mondashans, and many others. We simply chose not to announce it to those who wouldn't approve, which was mainly you, Forlag. Admiral Thorne stepped forward. Esteemed counselors, I come before you not as an escapee or a rebel, but as an ambassador. The United Earth Alliance wishes to rejoin galactic society, to share our advancements, and to forge new partnerships. Advancements? Scoffed a corpulent delegate. What advancements could you possibly have made in isolation? A subtle smile played across Thorne's lips. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. She nodded to a human officer standing nearby, a woman with intricate circuitry embedded in her temples. Dr. Eva Rostova, the chief science officer of the Deadless. Rostova tapped a sequence into her wrist device. Instantly, the center of the chamber floor transformed. A holographic projection appeared, but it was solid, tangible, with a depth and substance that defied conventional physics. Hardlight technology, Rostova explained. A perfect marriage of energy and matter. We have used it to build colonies in the harshest environments, create medical devices that can repair tissue at the cellular level, and develop construction techniques that can raise cities in days. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the chamber. That's just the beginning, continued Admiral Thorne. We have mastered quantum entanglement communication, allowing instantaneous transmissions across any distance. We have developed bioneural interfaces that allow direct mind-to-machine connection. And we have created a new form of faster-than-light travel that doesn't rely on your hyperspace corridors. Impossible, declared another delegate. No species could advance so rapidly. No species that plays by your rules, corrected Thorne. You gave us the greatest gift imaginable, counselors. You freed us from your bureaucracy, your ancient restrictions, your fear of change. We had no choice but to innovate or perish. You expect us to believe you developed all this on your own? Forlag's form quivered with fury. Necessity is the mother of invention, Thorne quoted, an old human saying. When you cut us off from galactic trade, we had to become self-sufficient. When you denied us access to hyperspace routes, we had to find our own paths between the stars. And that's not all they did, added Grand Admiral Lyra. While the Concord was busy maintaining the status quo, humans were forming new alliances, opening new trade routes, and building a new galactic economy right under our noses. The chamber doors burst open. A flustered security officer rushed in. "Hi, Arbiters. We have a situation. Human ships are appearing throughout Concord space. Hundreds of them, materializing without warning." A wave of panic swept through the chamber. Admiral Thorne remained perfectly calm. "There's no need for concern. Those ships are part of our new diplomatic corps. They are establishing embassies at key locations throughout the galaxy. We believe in making a good first impression." "This is an invasion," Forlag declared. "If we wanted to invade," Thorne replied coolly, "we wouldn't have announced ourselves. And we certainly wouldn't be standing here asking for peaceful reintegration." A heavy silence fell. For the first time in millennia, the highest authority in the galaxy found itself at a crossroads, facing a power they could neither control nor comprehend. It was Councillor Drex who broke the silence. "I move that we recognize the United Earth Alliance as a sovereign entity with all the rights and privileges of full Concord membership." "Seconded," said the CRTH councillor immediately. "You can't be serious," Forlag protested. "They violated the barrier. They infiltrated our space. They did exactly what any of us would have done in their position," interrupted a new voice. Councillor TRL, one of the oldest and most respected beings in the Concord, rose from his seat. "For too long, this Concord has governed through fear and control. We isolated humanity not because they were dangerous, but because they were different, because they challenged our comfortable assumptions. I, for one, am tired of fearing change. And if we refuse?" Forlag demanded. Admiral Thorne's expression remained serene, but her voice carried throughout the chamber with unmistakable strength. "Then we will continue on our own path. We will trade with those who wish to trade. We will share knowledge with those who wish to learn. We will form alliances with those who recognize us as equals. The only difference will be that you will have chosen to exclude yourselves from the future we are building." The vote, when it came, was a landslide. A perfect inversion of the vote that had banished humanity 50 years earlier. As the session adjourned, Thorne approached Forlag, who sat alone, his form limp with defeat. "This isn't the end of galactic civilization, Arbiter," she said gently. "It's a new beginning." Forlag looked up with ancient, tired eyes. "You don't understand. We built these rules to prevent chaos." "And in doing so," Thorne replied, "you nearly suffocated the very spirit of discovery that brought us all to the stars in the first place. There is a middle path, order without stagnation, progress without chaos. We'd like you to help us find it." Forlag blinked in surprise. "You want my help?" "Of course," Thorne said. "We may be innovative, but we lack your experience, your perspective, your wisdom. The future we envision includes everyone, even those who once feared us." For the first time in centuries, Forlag found himself speechless. As Admiral Thorne turned to leave, he called after her. "Admiral, when you breached HFY barrier, how long could you have done that?" Thorne paused at the door, then answered with perfect honesty. "We could have broken through after 15 years. We decided to wait until we were ready to change the galaxy, not just rejoin it." As she walked away, Forlag felt something he hadn't experienced in millennia. Uncertainty, yes, but also a flicker of something else. Something that felt remarkably like hope.